Okay, now the fixative is pretty dry now. And I didn't do a really thick layer of the fixative, so there is a chance that some of this charcoal is going to move when we paint with it. I'm not too worried about it. I'm just going to let what happens happens. I'm just going to get a little paper towel here, and let's grab a nice clean brush. Just going to take off the excess paint. And let's get a little bit of white on my brush, and I've got a tiny bit left of that blue on my palette here. This brush was really wet. Just gonna get a little of that excess off there. Okay, so just got a little bit of that blue. So I'm just gonna mix it together so it's really mostly white, just a little bit of blue. I just want to come in here really lightly. My intention is not to cover up the trees. I just want this blue over here to meet with the blue over there. I could have done that now, hindsight's always 20/20. Had I known where I was going, what I could have done was wait and do this whole sky kind of area and then draw my trees. But, by doing it this way, we're going to have this sort of glazed over layer with the trees. And then when I come back over again with the charcoal, it's just going to give it this extra depth. So it's actually, even though it feels like a mistake, like, oh, why didn't I think to do that first? It's going to work out in the end. Just get a little bit more, and I kind of want to just do the same thing over here as well. So just sort of a light, that's why I want to take all the excess water off my brush. Just get in there with sort of a light, glazy color. Now, this piece, I want to keep it really loose, and because I'm putting the more sort of representational aspects in it, like the trees, what I want to do is keep this sky sort of just chunky and random and loose. So these swooshes of paint up here that don't particularly look like clouds, but they give the impression of clouds, I'm going to leave them kind of messy like that. I like it like that. I'll just take this blue down. I'm just going to add a little bit down in here. Now I did spray this with the fixative, so it's not spreading a ton, but it's just a little bit there. All right, now let's mix a little something different here. Let's get some of that phthalo turquoise we used a little bit earlier. I'm just going to put it, where am I? I'm going to find a clean spot on my palette here. Just a touch of that. And then let's get a touch of the raw umber. Raw umber. Ooh. And a little bit of the burnt sienna. And I'm going to take my brush. I haven't rinsed it. I don't need to. I'm just going to dip it back into my white there and mix all those colors together. So that was phthalo turquoise, raw umber, burnt sienna, and a bunch of white. And it's going to give us this sort of turquoisey color, which I'm kind of feeling like down here, we give the impression of a little bit of water down here. And we can just do that with just, a little bit of blue. I mean, of course, we know that water often isn't actually blue, but in this case, it's just going to give that sort of feeling of water. I'm just going to take the excess paint off my brush here. And come up. Just add a little bit of this sort of darker, slightly darker blue up throughout. And it's just going to get a little bit more white on the same brush without rinsing it, and it's giving us this sort of lighter blue color. We can come down here, maybe we use that to blend. There we go. Now I'm going to set this brush aside. I'm not going to stick it in the water just yet because I might want to go back to that blue. And because we're working quickly, I don't have to worry about it drying too quickly. I'm just going to grab another one of these big brushes here. A little more of the burnt sienna. A little bit of the raw umber. And dip my bristles in some white, or I could put some white out on my palette. And I'm just going to mix those three together. And it's going to give us this sort of back to that sort of pinky area we were before. And I'm gonna mix that through. I'd love to get this bottom corner here completely covered in paint. It's sort of white right now. Now, this shade I've got on my brush is a little bit on the orange side. So of course when it mixes with that blue, it mutes things out a little bit. And it becomes almost a muddy color. But that's okay because it's sort of like deliberate mud. It's sort of a neutral. And we can do something with that. We can come over with some brighter colors, but it's going to give us a nice sort of neutral background color. Maybe we'll get a little bit of this sort of muddiness up at the top here, making that blue not quite so bright. There we go. All right. Now I'm going to put that back in the water there. Let's see, where can we go next with this sky? Let's get a little bit more of a greenish tinge. So we're going to get the raw umber, just a touch, and a touch of our quinacridone gold. And when we mix those two together, it gives us a brown, but remember it kind of comes up a little bit green. See how lovely that is? So let's just, maybe we can actually kind of come in by our trees. So I'm just really lightly, oh, and I should have said sorry, I grabbed a 1/2 inch filbert. We can come in around our trees though. I can actually use a little bit of that color. So I'm just kind of going where the tree was, really lightly, dancing that brush over top. Nothing crazy, nothing major. We're going to come back in again, just sort of adding a little bit of that permanence there. And maybe this color kind of comes down a little bit down in here. It's got a little bit more raw umber. The raw umber is not as warm as the sienna, so it gives us just a nice balance of it's just going to shift that color just a little bit in a way that's really nice. So because there's some yellow in this, when we mix with this blue here, look what happens. We automatically get this sort of greeny color. Okay. Now let's go back to our little wedge here. Let's do something. Let's kind of mix things up. Now this is a risk, right? And I'm taking you along for my risks. I just want to show you the process. And what I hope you get from this is kind of trusting those risks every once in a while. I'm just going to grab a little bit of Payne's Gray and my wedge, and I'm going to run my wedge through it. So I put the Payne's Gray on the palette, I ran my wedge through it there. Now I know we've got our trees here, but what happens if we kind of come along with our wedge and we kind of create like the indication of some mountains. So the way I'm doing that is I'm kind of holding it on an angle. I'm going to go up on an angle and then come down. Just going to get a little bit more on there. And so just loading that up. So I'm coming up on an angle and then down this way. So I'm holding this that way, so the thin part is running across the canvas, and then I'm going to pull the flat part down on the canvas. And see how it kind of almost gives that indication of mountain peaks. Kind of cool, right? So just going to load up that little spatula again, and then maybe I'm going to come down here. I want to bring some of that blue. All right, now what we can do is actually get a little bit of the white onto our palette. Just a little bit of, I'm using gesso, you can use white paint. And now I'm going to take that same spatula, I'm not rinsing it off, but I'm just going to dip that in the white. And then look what we can do. We can kind of come over and kind of go in those same motions. Oh, I'm just going to cut that way on that one a little bit. So I don't want to take out all that lovely dark blue, and in fact I'm actually going to get a little bit more back on there. So just loading up that again, and let's just get a little bit matte back in the blue there. Just letting it sort of mix very organically on the canvas. Make sure I don't overdo it. Let's get a little more of that blue, maybe kind of coming down in here. There we go. And then how about a little drips? A little drip action. Or would we like to see some drips? How about, what if we did some drips in there? A little bit in there maybe. Okay, now, yep, I'm using my sleeve to catch the drips. That's why I can't have nice clothes. Now, again, I think it's going to be important to step away and let this layer dry. And we can come back over, we can reinvent or introduce the sort of tree shapes over here, maybe making them a little bolder. Maybe we'll have to come in a little lighter over those mountains. And in fact, you know what, as I say that, I am going to do that right now. I'm just going to get a little bit more white on that. And let's come down that face there. And then, oh, actually, I love that. I love to do a nice drag down. What if we drag down? So just a quick flick, holding this way to the canvas, and a quick flick downwards. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now we'll let this layer dry, we'll step away, and when we come back, we'll kind of decide where we're going to go next with this. We can put some more layers over top, or we can kind of like let it keep going down this road. But I'm pretty excited where we're going with this, so I'll see you in a moment.